Hello, this is Siri and you're listening to my favorite podcast, Not Real Art. I live for this shit cause it's totally lit.
Let's go!
Not Real Art, the podcast
With the hosts.
with the most. Man one and Mr.X coming at you live in front of your naked, steaming ears. I can't take credit for that one. That's a
No?
David Lee Roth classic.
Oh, is it?
So I got a new app.
Oh,
Got a new app.
what's the new?
Well, because, you know, to the extent that we are a, fun, entertaining reality show, or I'm sorry, radio show, reality show / radio show.
Well, I don't know.
I had to get sound effects.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh no, this is not going to end well. This is not going to end well.
Hold on.
No. Yeah.
Not real art, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Definitely not real art. Here, hold on. Oh, we got to go here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not real art.
That's right.
Oh, here. When we say something funny,
Oh man,
right?
I'm about to tune out.
When we,
Let alone.
wait, okay. Oh, here we go.
Let's see. Oh man. High production value going on here, people.
All right, enough of that.
High production value.
Hey, there's an app for that.
There's an app.
If there was only an app for making a good podcast,
Oh yeah. No, there isn't. Not yet.
clearly we're proof of that because,
Yeah.
if we had an app, we would own that app. But
It-
this
it-
podcast is a fucking disaster.
Well, it could be worse because I was advised not to do drinking podcasts
Okay.
because apparently that's a thing.
Oh,
There's
you
there's-
drink while you...
You drink while you podcast.
Yeah.
And so the first 15 minutes is good, but then the next hour sucks because it's just drunk people.
Well, it'd be funny to do a series of podcasts with the different drugs.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
so you do one podcast with the drinking.
yeah,
Then you do one podcast with weed.
yeah,
Right? Then you do one podcast with cocaine.
yeah.
Then you do one podcast with ecstasy. Right? You do one podcast with mushrooms. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's an experiment.
Not real art.
Yeah.
Not real art. So,
What are we talking about today?
there's so much to talk about. And, one of the things that I want to make sure that we cover, and, we're not going to cover it in one podcast.
Yeah,
We'll cover it, I think, over multiple podcasts because it will be a reoccurring subject. But,
yeah,
the podcast is a great opportunity for us to capture the history of Crewest Gallery, the gallery you started in 2002.
okay,
We met, you and I, 2004, something like that. So
Yeah.
you had already founded the gallery in Alhambra, I think in 2002.
yep,
As I recall, you started the gallery really out of frustration as an artist, graffiti artist.
uh-huh,
Graffiti art was persona non grata within
Yeah.
the conventional gallery circuit. So you said, fuck it, I'm going to start my own gallery. And I mean, that's kind of historic for the graffiti art scene in LA.
Well, it's not exactly how it started.
Okay.
Pretty close, but
Sounded good.
it sounded good. Yeah, you should pitch it.
Dude, I've been telling that to hundreds of people. Now you just correct me. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's
Let's set the record
let's
straight.
set the record straight.
Okay.
So this is how it all started. In the 90s, I had been traveling back and forth to Europe to do graffiti, you know? So I was in, different cities and countries in Europe, and they had awesome fucking paint, you know? They had all kinds of brands, and in all kinds of colors. And so I loved traveling to Europe so I could use this awesome fucking paint. And we used to actually bring it back, believe it or not, in duffel bags.
We check the bags?
No, fucking we'd take them right into the fucking,
What?
yeah, above our seat. We'd just put them in the
Carry on.
We'd have a giant duffel bag. I remember I brought back like 100 cans one time in a duffel bag. Imagine now, there's no fucking way.
Oh my God!
And we'd go through security, and you just open your bag.
That's amazing.
And they would look through, make sure there's not a bomb
Right.
amongst the 100 cans that you're carrying.
Right.
And then you just walk in and you just put it, in the overhead,
No bombs, but lots of bombing.
Right. And so, yeah, as long as it fit in the overhead, they didn't care what the fuck you carried on there, as long as it wasn't a gun or a weapon or something, I guess. So spray cans apparently were okay,
in the 90s, late 90s, mid 90s.
Yeah, early 90s,
Right, okay.
mid 90s.
The 90s.
In the 90s. So anyways, so we'd bring back spray paint and stuff like that because we couldn't get it here. So one day, and this is where I get in trouble as I start thinking about fucking, how can we make this better and how can I, make more money doing this shit. And I started thinking about all these crazy things, and then that's how this started. I was like, what, 1999. Well, around there, around the late 90s, I was like, I got to get this paint. How can I get this paint over here? Blah, blah, blah. At the same time, I was becoming more popular as an artist, and people were hitting me up to do all kinds of projects, right? But they were asking me to do things that I could not do. For example, tattoos, or different types of like digital illustration or whatever. And I couldn't do any of that stuff. Slime. Yeah, I sucked at that. And so they'd call me and ask me to do, this different projects or airbrushing. And I was like, nah, I don't airbrush. And so I got tired of throwing away all these gigs and just saying no. I said, you know what? I have a lot of friends who do this kind of stuff. I have friends who are artists in other mediums. So why don't I represent them, So that instead of throwing away the gig when I get a call for something I don't do, why don't I just hand it off to a friend of mine and then I'll take a cut? So that's what I did. And I figured there's no better way to do it than start a website and promote it. So I started Crewest.com in 2000.
Where did the name come from, Crewest?
So as I was coming up with the name for the website, obviously it was rooted in graffiti, rooted in that culture, and so crews, right? Like this was my crew, and my crew of artists that I was going to start working with. So I knew I wanted that word in there somehow, and then I really wanted to distinguish ourselves as a West Coast thing, not New York graffiti, not New York or East Coast. So I wanted West Coast in there somewhere. So as I was messing around, just sketching out the name and whatever, I all of a sudden, mashed up crew with West, and figured if I make it one word, just use one W, it's kind of a funky word. And, Crewest. Is it Crewest or is it Crewest? I don't know. But it sounded cool. It sounded different. No one else had it. It was unique. So I bought the domain name, created a logo, and started the website. So it was Crewest.com in 2000. And so that was to promote my friends. And I started working. People started calling me because they wanted, their car airbrushed. So then I'd say, hey, I don't do that, but my homeboy Victor Sepulveda does that, Shout out
to Victor.
Or hey, I want a tattoo done. Do you know any tattoo artists? So then I would. So that went on for a couple years. And it was, it was okay. It was just my side gig. It wasn't like I was really actively promoting it necessarily. So as I was doing that, this is where both worlds kind of came together here, is I was also getting tired of always having to do murals using Krylon, right? So here I am in 2000 and 2001, creating murals with spray cans that were, subpar, like paint that was fading, just meanwhile knowing that across the world, they were actually making really good quality paint, actually making a bunch of colors that I wanted that I didn't have access to. And so I said, you know what? Fuck it. Let me call these guys. So I remember I called the Molotov headquarters, right? Because now they had this, and back then it was just Belton. It wasn't even Molotov yet. It was just Belton. But I remember using Belton in Germany, and I really liked the quality of it. So I called Belton headquarters, and I said, you know what? When are you guys going to have this paint available in the United States? Because I want to use it. And they said, okay, well, actually, next year in 2002, we're going to have it. And they said, do you want to be, and we're going to have it there because we just signed a deal, and we're going to have a what do you call it?
Distributor?
A distributor, North American distributor. And where are you located? I said, well, I'm in Los Angeles. And they said, well, we don't have any reps or dealers in LA yet. Are you interested in repping the brand, and dealing it?
Sure.
Or just for yourself? And so I thought about it. I said, no, you know what? I might as well. If I want the paint, I know other people want the paint. So what does it take to be a dealer? And so they told me, what the buy-in was and all that. And I said, okay, I'll get back to you. And I started trying to figure out, how I can come up with the money and
What was the buyout?
Well, the original buy-in,
right.
I think, because you had to buy, I think it was like $20,000 purchase of paint, something like that.
Right.
Like the first batch was like 20 grand or 25 grand, something like that.
A lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money when you don't have a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And so, and I wasn't expecting to do that, So, I was kind of kicking around the idea, and I was like, man, I wish I had like 20 grand lying around. I'd get it. I'd do this, but I don't. And a friend of mine, we happened to be talking one day, old friend of mine, Harry Reynolds. And so I was talking to him, and he's like, you know what? I can get the money. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I think my dad would loan us the money to do this.
Family loan, yeah.
So we started talking. One thing led to another, and we decided to start selling Belton Molotov spray paint in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And we were literally, at this time, I had my studio in Alhambra, which is like 10 minutes, 15 minutes east of downtown LA. Residential area, not the art capital of anything.
Do you know what supermodel is from Alhambra?
No, there was a supermodel from Alhambra?
Cheryl Teagues.
Cheryl Teagues. Really?
Born and raised.
Well, there you go.
See? Learn something new every day, even
every day.
From your hometown.
I didn't even know that. So, so me and Harry are sitting across. We're sitting, having some pizza, and talking about this. Well, if we do this, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna sell it? We can't sell it out of the car, which actually graffiti writers do all the time.
Right. Sure.
But I was like, nah, we got to have an actual location, blah blah blah. And I'm looking across the street on Valley Boulevard, and there's a little tiny shop, and it has a sign for rent.
Mm-hmm.
And so for lease or whatever. So we go over there. We're like, look, there's a spot right there. It's not all we need is.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm remembering it was like 500-600 square feet, or was it?
It was 700 square feet,
right.
Which was still tiny.
Yeah.
But we didn't care. All we needed was a place to put a counter and
store the paint,
a cash register, and store the paint, and that was it. So we went in there, and the rent was super cheap, and we were like, you know what? Let's do it here. So it was like, okay, we're gonna start a paint shop here. That was where it all started. So this is where it all comes together. I gave you the backstory on the paint and Crewest.com, because this is where it all comes together. I was just like, well, if I'm gonna sell paint, right, I might as well have something on the walls instead of just white walls, right? And being an artist, I might as well hang my artwork on the walls. Sure. It's like only logical, right?
Of course.
So I didn't really set out to start a gallery.
Right.
I set out to start a shop. And oh, by the way, it's also a gallery.
Right. Right.
And I said, well, since I'm already showing, so to speak, my friends online at Crewest.com, I might as well name the shop Crewest. And that'll be the name of the shop and gallery. And so when I painted the logo on the front of the building, it actually said Crewest Store and Gallery. Mm-hmm. And because for me, it was important that I let people know that it was a store first. Like I was always like, well, if I'm gonna get in business doing this,
right,
it's got to be about business, And these are small mistakes that people make where they don't name something outright, or they keep it hidden, or they try to be clever, and then at the end of the day, they're wondering why
they bury the lead.
Yeah, they're like, why am I not making sales? Well, because you're pitching it as a cultural, freaking place instead of what you want to do.
Cultural retreat. No, you're trying to make money.
Trying to make money.
Right.
You're trying to make it a store. So I said, well, there's two things here going on. We're going to be selling paint, and this paint has never been available in this country before, let alone Los Angeles. We're going to be the first ones to carry this paint. So we were like, we're going to cash in, So that's going to drive the business, is the paint. Everything else will be just the gravy, right? So like we'll hang art on the walls, and we'll have art shows. Whether or not the art sells is irrelevant. What matters is that we sell paint, right? So believe it or not, we had. So I opened up the gallery, or grand opening, with my artwork, and I had my, it was the easiest way to do it.
You were cheap,
and we started selling art like from day one, which was like, okay, cool. So we started putting T-shirts in there, and just some products here and there. Magazines. There was this thing called VHS tapes back then.
I remember.
So we used to sell videos.
And Beta. What was the other one? Was the Beta? No,
Yeah.
not Beta.
Yeah, Beta
it
was
Beta.
a-
VHS.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, this
better
was
technology, but of course
this
it
was
went
this
nowhere.
was VHS
Yeah.
and CDs and DVDs,
Right.
and we were selling like graffiti mags and things like that. So we started doing like graffiti culture stuff.
And there was no other shop in LA like this at the time.
There was no other shop doing it at all.
Right.
There had been pop-up shows with graffiti, or there was like a place called like Workman's Outlet, which was kind of like they sold like Echo and brands like that. But then they sold maybe some caps or like markers or videos, but they weren't a full-on gallery or anything like that. So we were the first to do that kind of model, and especially within this culture. So we, after my show, I said, well, I might as well ask other friends of mine to have shows there. So I started asking other friends to do shows and exhibits and sell their work. And at the beginning, I was so not thinking that we were going to sell art that our commission was 30%. So the artist made 70% of sales, and the gallery kept 30%, right? Which, if you talk to galleries now,
Typically 50-50, right?
there's typically 50-50. But for me, it was like, well, I'm an artist. I know artists always get screwed.
Yeah.
So I want to be on the artist side,
Right.
But I still want to run a business. So how do I'm not going to give them 100% of the sales, but I'll keep 30, which is more than fair. But we're going to make our money still on the spray paint. So that was the whole idea, and that's how it started. So the fact of the matter is that we started off to sell paint, and then it turned into a gallery, Right. And there's so much we can talk about that, but when we moved to downtown 4 years later, because 2 years later we were already running out of space in this gallery, but we wanted to move to the right location. So when we moved to downtown, everything got flipped, because all of a sudden no one even in terms of sales, no one really cared about the paint as much as they did about the art. And so we turned into like a true gallery
Well,
once
and
we
the
got to
space
downtown.
was like 2,100 square feet.
Yeah, it was a beautiful space,
Yeah.
you know, 20-foot ceilings, white walls. I mean, and that was, I mean, I remember when we opened up, people in downtown, when we reopened in downtown, people were like, this is like a museum. This isn't a gallery.
Right.
And that was the idea, is that I wanted to take the level up because up to now, every time someone had a graffiti show, you know, it was in a back alley. There was like this kind of like grungy attitude about it, and you know, shit wasn't hung right, and there was shitty lighting, and I was like, no, we're gonna do it like super.
Do it right.
Yeah, just do it right, and you know, because I wanted to elevate the art form.
Right.
And I figured if I elevate the art form, you know, it'll be good for all of us, you know, and that's kind of where it started, you know.
Part one
of
a 20-part saga.
at least
At least.
of a 10-year saga.
That's right. Man one, great to see you, my friend.
You too, brother.
All right. Peace.
Peace out.